Would everyone rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So, first thing is Drew Farmer, Councilor Farmer, will not be attending this evening. Councilor Carmen Matthews is virtual, as also as Sarah Stevens, Councilor Sarah Stevens. So the first item on the agenda this evening is public comments. So this would be the time you come up and make a public comment, preferably something that's not on the agenda. If you make the comment about the agenda item, then we're going to take that as a comment during the public agenda item. So basically, I understand there's going to be some that's going to be addressing the public hearing enacting the ordinance Title 17. So preferably if you wait and have that discussion and make those comments at that time. So this would also be the time for anyone else to make a public comment. And so I want to preface, just because you make the public comment doesn't mean that we're going to respond immediately to that comment. It means that we're going to listen to that comment, and then at the end of the comments, the council or myself or will direct staff to make a comment if we feel it's necessary. Okay? All right. So anyone with a public comment to begin with? James?
Good evening. James Barron's, Fulton Street, Coos Bay. I am a member of 15 Neighborhoods, which is a lobbying and political action organization that is expanding throughout the Oregon coast. I'm the Coos Bay core member, been the core member for close to 9 months. And I'd like to point out one thing to this council. This council has before it an issue with the library. A very needed facility in this community, okay? It's needed as a gathering place. It's needed as a place to support young children in the community. There's numerous things. We are blessed with an excellent library director. However, we seem to have dropped the ball on figuring out where to put it. And my suggestion to this council, to be brought up at the next meeting, is to put on a ballot a straight up and down vote, yes or no, on the park site. And that will allow the people that need to plan this, need to organize this, need to get the funding for this, to take a pivot, listen to the community again, and come up with something that will pass. My opinion, and we do polling a little bit, not real sophisticated, but I've only missed one election here in 20 years where I've gotten it wrong, all right? It would have passed if it wasn't at that park. Not by much, but it would have passed. It would have passed in Empire, it would have passed downtown, it would have passed any place else but that park and Mingus, all right? They're untouchable. They're a political hot potato. You need to put that particular issue in front of the voters. When you approved that site, you were 4-3.
1 minute.
Okay, 4-3 to approve that site. That's not a resounding consensus. That site's going to haunt you all the way through trying to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, I'll close public comments. So to address James' comment, this has already been discussed. Right after the election, the Council Library Steering Committee staff has convened and talked about how to move forward. We already talked about putting an advisory vote out on addressing what James already did. We've talked about the Library Steering Committee, talked about doing some polling, which I think they might be going ahead and doing. But these are all being discussed. The items that we heard about is location. We also did hear about the park. We also heard about the cost. We also heard that it wants to be downtown. So that's what I've heard. And I think other councilors have heard similar things. So that's what we're trying to decide. You're right, and he's right. I think the library is very important and needed in this community. And I can tell you, in fact, Janice, who's going to be addressing us in a short period of time at the VCB, sits on library board, as Rob Miles does also. And and Carmen Matthews, they can tell you that this is something that we're going to move forward with and we want to achieve. And we want to make sure that we go out and do it in the right way. Now, we're not going to be doing this in November by any means, putting this back on the ballot. I'm not sure we'll meet the May deadline or not. It just depends. It is urgent that we move forward on this as soon as possible because we have a deteriorating building. But I've made a presentation to Rotary right after this, and basically I stated everything's on the table, because it is. We need to, in my opinion, reevaluate and move forward in whatever direction that after we do an analysis, and that's what we're in the process of doing. So thank you for your comment, James. All right, first item on the agenda this evening is presentation of semi-annual report by the Coos Bay Visitors Association.
Mr. Mayor, can we
Oh.
do the consent calendar first?
I was going to move it to the end, but since you brought it up, we'll go ahead and do it now.
Okay. I'll move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
All right, the first item on the agenda that I was remiss in, and I was so anxious because I was talking about Janice and getting the report, but as the consent calendar. So the consent calendar has been moved and seconded to be voted on as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. And Melissa's right on, or Nicole, somebody's on it. So the presentation of the semi-annual report by the Coos Bay North Bend Visitors Convention Bureau. Janice, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, both present and up on the Zoom, and city staff, as well as this really large audience tonight. This happened last time I was here, too. We had another controversial issue that I was part of. Every year we get 2 opportunities to come and talk to you at the City Council as one of our funders. So for many, many years, we were funded through a very stable 3-legged stool, the City of Coos Bay, the City of North Bend, and the Coquel Indian Tribe. With the election or the ballot that passed in May, we will now be a 4-legged stool that adds Coos County, but it's not the entire county. It is a prescribed area around the community of Charleston, because Charleston is not its own incorporated taxing entity. It had to go to the county. The ballot measure did pass. A 9.5% tax will be added to the lodging properties in an area from the city limits line on Cape Arago Highway to Cape Arago State Park, and from the ocean inland a little bit, up Seven Devils Road to about South Slough and into the Barview area. This will allow the Charleston Merchants Association to create a new visitor center. They were the ones who went to the county. It will also add a little bit to our budget to help promote even more about what is happening in our communities and give us a better chance to compete with the coastal communities up and down the coast that we compete with. So a quick look at our how we ended. Well, I can't actually tell you how we ended fiscal year 22 because we still have the fourth quarter funds to come in. We also have some bills yet to pay. And honestly, our fiscal year is not completely complete until the audit happens. And we are, our budget is so large now that we have to have an actual full audit every year. But I can tell you, with 3/4 of our funding in from our lodging tax, we were already at 102% to budget, which means we are going to end the year with quite a bit of more overage than we budgeted for the new fiscal year. In addition, I'll call your attention to the $171,950 that we showed for VIC income. We included in that budget, we were in discussions with North Bend to take over the management of the North Bend Visitor Information Center. That did not come to fruition. They have opted to go a different direction. So that money was an in and out. So the same income was what we were going to spend, so that balances itself out and will show that we will not get that money, nor will we have spent it.
Janice, can you remind us all what VIC is?
Yes, sorry, Visitor Information Center. So we, as an entity, through a separate agreement with the City of Coos Bay, run the Coos Bay Visitor Information Center on behalf of the city. It is their facility. We just manage it on their behalf. So we get a separate set of money from the city, and we were going to do the same thing with North Bend, but that did not come to fruition. So it will not show up in future budgets. So this is our budget for the new fiscal year, which began on July 1st. We are conservative every year. We budget quite conservatively, not only our carryover, which we know will exceed the $225,000, but in our revenue. This revenue did not include what we are anticipating getting through Coos County from the Charleston area, because when we had to do our budget in May, the ballot had not gone, we had not had the election yet. So we couldn't include that. But we are anticipating that there will be some addition to the budget. We won't see even the first payment until February. The county has set it so that the lodging properties in those areas will not start collecting tax until October 1st. Then they have 3 months of collections. They have an entire month before they have to remit it. So then it takes a little bit of time for us to get it. So this is our budget. We ended last year, our last fiscal year, quite a bit higher than we had anticipated. So it looks like our advertising budget, the last set of columns, looks really close, because we spent $649,000 this year. We're budgeting $652,000 next year, and that's because our carryover from the previous FY21 was higher, so we actually added $100,000 to our advertising budget, which we have spent. So we are able now to compete quite a bit more. Just a reminder of where we were in 2019, pre-pandemic. 270 visitors to our county spent $277.3 million. They spent that on lodging, dining, recreation, all kinds of things that visitors do when they come. Of course, the pandemic devastated not only us, but the entire state and the entire country and the entire world. We lost 35% of our visitor spend. But we didn't lose as much of our lodging spend. 2021, we now have full information for 2021. We increased and we gained back 22% of what we lost, but our lodging spend exceeded not only what we got in 2020, but what we got in 2019. Some of that is because our lodging properties were able to charge a little more than they had in the past, but it also meant that we were seeing completely sold out time frames here. People wanted to travel where they could spread out and do wonderful outdoor activities. So here's what we're planning for the new year. Mostly this is just positioning statements. We are well positioned. We have some great resources. We'll have some more funding coming in because of the Charleston tax. So we are, but we know that our consumers have financial concerns with the price of gas, inflation, those kinds of things. Although the price of gas is starting to come down, so we're very happy about that. We also are able to compete now with some of our coastal destinations. This is the first year we will have an entire year of all of our events. So this gives us some more exciting, fun things to promote. We are expanding our regional drive market. We used to concentrate mostly on Oregon with a little bit of Northern California. Now we are going from Northern California to Seattle. Some of that big data that we got this past year showed that we actually have a larger visitorship from Washington State than we anticipated. So we're spending some of our money in that way. We do less and less print advertising every year. We are finding that some magazines are printing fewer issues every year. Portland Monthly is now Portland Quarterly. Although they still call themselves Portland Monthly, they only print quarterly. So we do still work with those publications, but we do more digital with them. And we do more digital across the board. We can track it. We can see what ads are doing well, which ones are not necessarily catching attention. That just showed you how we were going to break down our budget. I'll put it back up here. So the $652,000, most of that goes to consumer marketing. We spend some of it on our website. We have some special projects listed, and that's mostly things that come up in the middle of the year that we're like, ooh, we didn't know this was going to happen. Great, we can take advantage of it. So these are the kinds of things we do. Public relations, guerrilla marketing, trade shows, those kinds of things all have budgeted amounts. Okay, oh, there we go. So here's some recent advertising we've been doing. Since the last time I was here, we promoted Barbecue Blues and Brews on the Bay. This one on the far right just shows you that the digital advertising has gotten so sophisticated now that we can embed a video in a digital ad, and people can see some of the fun things that you can do here. We do still do print. These are two of our print ads that were in 1859, and I think that one was in Portland Monthly. We also do some full-page ads. Again, 1859, Salmon's, the meetings planner is the one in the middle, and Portland Monthly was the full page. We do a lot of digital, like I said. Sometimes we pay a publication to own the entire content of their newsletters, and we send out our copy. We own the entire content. This is our Cool at the Coast campaign, which we started about 2 weeks ago because it was 100 degrees in the rest of the state. So we really promote our Cool at the Coast. We sent out a newsletter. We did a lot of digital. We also have a video. This is some sponsored content. So this is when we pay a magazine to allow us to put some content in their publication. This was Portland Monthly. It looks like an article written by Portland Monthly, but it was written by us. And again, another type of newsletter where we own all the content. We also do our own newsletter. I failed to talk about this at all of our presentations, and somebody asked me, well, how come we don't put out our own newsletter? I was like, oh, we do. So once a month, sometimes twice, depending on what's happening, we have a newsletter, and you can sign up for that on our website. We have about 11,000 who get the newsletter on a regular basis. We also do a lot of social media, promoting things like what there is to see and do, the fact that holiday lights are coming back. We targeted some social media to the World Athletic Championships, especially around Steve Prefontaine. And this is our newest campaign. Now, there's no voiceover over this, but I wanted to show you guys what our next campaign looks like. And this will have voiceover. So basically what we're showing here is all the different kinds of fishing you can do here, from standing on the jetty to going out on a boat on a lake to going out with a charter, deep sea and bay. So that's our fishing campaign. We're very excited about it. As I mentioned earlier, we do manage the Coos Bay Visitor Information Center. We did put out some ads this year to help us recruit more volunteers. We can always use volunteers. If anybody in the room would like to volunteer as a... I'm sorry? I do. I'll give you one. So in the Visitor Center, from January to June, which is the last part of the last fiscal year, we had 6,000 visitors in the center. We had 1,481 volunteer hours and 7,785 leads. This is people who got our visitor guide. So we got requests to send our visitor guide. That's how many we sent out. And we sold $11,000 worth of merchandise. For the entire fiscal year, we had 17,000 people in the visitor center. 2,900 volunteer hours, 12,000 leads, and we sold almost $28,000 worth of merchandise in the visitor center. And we continue to add merchandise, so if you haven't been in the visitor center lately, I encourage people to stop in and see all the fun things that they can get for friends and family. I added this after you guys got your packet because this came in late last week. Holiday lights at Shore Acres. This is going to come up again and again and again, and we're going to be talking about it a lot because the state parks have decided that no one is getting into holiday lights unless you have a timed reservation. You don't have to pay extra. $5 parking fee is the same as it has always been. If you have a state park pass, you get that fee waived. but you have to go online and you have to get a timed pass. The parks are no longer going to allow cars to just line up on Cape Arago Highway. There will be a sign in Charleston that says, if you don't have a timed pass, do not go further than this sign. And we are going to be talking about it. We'll have a setup in the visitor center to help visitors to book passes. You can book half the spaces now online. In November, they're going to start a rolling 7 days where the next day's event, the rest of the parking spots will be available. For those people who aren't ready to say, I'm going to go on November 29th. People don't know that now. Some people do, but most of us don't. So there will be, half the spots will be available within 7 days of each day. So I just want everybody to be aware, this has to happen. It was unsafe having cars lined up for hours and hours and hours on Cape Arago Highway without being able to get emergency vehicles into the park if there was an emergency. And there's a new park director, and she wanted to make sure that we are always being safe. Some things coming up. The fishing commercial that I just showed you guys will be finished in production. We're going to do some guerrilla marketing things in big cities. That means boots on the ground. We may be dressed as crabs. I don't know. We're still thinking about some fun ideas. We are embarking on a 3-year strategic planning process with a company called Whereabout out of Portland. And we have 2 really big conferences coming in the fall. Both of them will be at the Mill. The Travel and Words Conference is put on by Northwest Travel and Life magazine. It is travel writers and destinations, kind of a speed dating kind of conference. We are doing a lot of showing these writers around so that they'll write more about us. So we're really excited to host this. And then the Oregon Economic Development Association is also having their conference in October. And then more big data. We keep looking at the big data. It's really fun to look at. So that's my presentation. I'm open for any questions.
Questions, anyone?
Janice, when you talk about that big data, being that I sit on the board, I think it's really important to point out that we use that data to really make decisions on where and how we advertise. Could you speak to that a bit more?
Sure. In fact, that is where we learned and determined that Washington State brings more visitors here than we anticipated. The big data that we are using is a company called Datafy, and they track cell phone data. I'm sorry, everybody's cell phone is a tracker. And it tracks your movements. So we know that this cell phone started in Washington, lives in Washington, and came here. So this is how we determined that we needed to expand our advertising into Washington State. And truly, King County is our 7th most populous county for visitors to our area, and that's Seattle. So we look at this data, and we can look at it in a bunch of different ways, but mostly we're looking at where are our visitors coming from so that we know where we need to put more of our attention.
And Janice, in terms of the budget, so with the county being a new partner, that Charleston area. I know that will bring more money to the Visitor and Convention Bureau to help promote our area. But could you talk about the fact, the comparison of our budget to the budgets of the North Coast and why it's so important that we have such strong partnerships?
Sure. So our partnerships here are very important, and there will be an intergovernmental agreement between the 3 existing partners and Coos County that's in the works right now. The entire budget for us this year, without Charleston, but even with, would be about $1.2, $1.4 million. That's the entire advertising budget for Lincoln City. It's not even close to the advertising budget for Cannon Beach. So we are getting closer at $650,000. That's about half of what Lincoln City gets to spend, but it gets us closer every year. So, I mean, we started when that slide shows, when I first started here, we had about a $250,000 advertising budget. We have grown that over the years to now being closer to, over $500,000. So we are getting closer to to our competitors.
And with that big data, we're seeing the effectiveness, and we're actually seeing that the advertising that we're doing, we're seeing visitors in our community. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we know that there are some ads that we placed specifically to see if we could see them in our community. That's one of the things that this company can do for us. We can serve ads through the big data, and they know which phone saw that ad. And then they can say, well, that phone showed up in Coos Bay. And that gives us not only return on investment, so we can see how much we spent and how much they spent when they came, but it shows the effectiveness of our advertising campaigns and says people saw an ad and they showed up in our destination. That is one of the hardest things about advertising, is that unless I'm selling a widget, which I'm not, I am selling the Mills widget and I'm selling the Seven Devils' widget, but I'm not selling a widget where I can say, oh, they bought that from my site because they saw an ad. I can say that they came to my site. I can say that some of them went from my site to somebody else's site, but I can't say that they bought or they came. So this gives us at least some idea that our ads are actually working and bringing people here. Thank you.
Have you done any analysis of your return on your investment?
Return on investment in general? Yeah. So from a campaign that we did for the holidays, our return on investment was about $200 was spent in the community for every dollar we spent on the ad campaign through Datafy. We are working on figuring out how to show return on investment overall, because the visitor spend data that I showed earlier is for the county. It's not just for Coos Bay, North Bend, Charleston. So I can't say that, no, we are kind of the big dog. We have the biggest budget. But I can't say that because I spent $600,000 that all of that $222 million is because I advertised. So
you can say that.
I can, but it's not exactly true. So we are looking for a company to help us figure out and
break it down.
Travel and tourism entities everywhere have this issue of how do we say this ad brought people to our town. So being able to do some of this through Datafy is helping us to show that it really did happen.
So I just want to go back to what you stated when you first came on. So when you first came on, this council just got elected, and you came on shortly after that. And the budget was $350,000, I believe. And what this council believed in, and does believe in, that tourism is an economic driver, and I think it's proven itself. They went out, and the board went out and got Janice, a director, and they've worked at it, and now this is where we're at. And unfortunately, we had the pandemic, which cut things down, but most of that was in retail and other spending, not in the hotels and motels that came. But I think we also picked up some new people, and even some people moving here. And then what also happened, maybe she and the VCB, the Visitor Convention Bureau, doesn't do the $220 million total, but what we do is we work with other parties in the county. And what we realized is working together, like the VCB did, North Bend, the Coco Tribe, and now Charleston ourselves, but we're also work with TSOC, which is a Southern Oregon coast from Reedsport to Brookings. And that's a part of the Bandon has implemented on themselves and put money into that. So we partner with them also. So we do multiple partnering, and what we're doing is making a bigger impact. What we realized is that from Reedsport to Brookings, we're a destination now. We don't just advertise ourselves for a one night or 2 night, a destination to stay here for a week or 2. And it's really working. So anyway, Janice, you did a great job. Any other comments or questions, anyone?
I was just going to say that when I was in the broadcasting industry, it was hard to pinpoint stuff because like you said, it may be this, it may be that. But I think, both of my neighbors that just bought houses in the last month were from out of the area. They may not know where they saw it, but they saw this location and then checked it out. And I think that even that marketing is probably directly related to some of that, like you said, relocation that we're seeing in this area. And both of them came from large areas, and they wanted to get out to the natural area. So even though I joke in jest about, whether or not that was part of that return, I do believe that anytime you market like that, they may not know exactly where they heard it or saw it or whatever,
Yeah.
but it's likely attributed to that marketing.
Well, and there is some empirical data about people who visit a destination and then move there. So there is something about making your destination livable so that people who visit want to move there and live there as well. So it's an interesting cycle. We are also, one of the ways that I know our advertising is working is because other destinations are copying what we're doing now.
There you go. Biggest
I
one
really,
with the lottery.
and I guess I just want to say thank you to Janice. The board was really focused on return on investment because we wanted to be responsible to the partners. And so Janice brought this company, Datify, to the board. And I know we've been using it for a little while, but
A
there's
year.
so much more to learn and to glean from all of that data. So I really appreciate Janice's diligence and just making sure that we're being really responsible to our partners.
Thank you.
Hey, Janice, what made you decide to go with fishing? Is that group of people spend that much money?
Yeah, so fishing is one of our top adventures. So we are Oregon's Adventure Coast, that's our brand. And so we have systematically over the last couple of years focused on specific things. The dunes was one whole campaign.
Next is going to be Adventure Cycle.
And then we have already done Whiskey Run. So we have a whole campaign about Whiskey Run. In fact, we did this campaign over the holiday, over the winter in Bend, because they can't ride their mountain biking trails in the winter. And we saw a lot of visitors from Bend show up at Whiskey Run. So we know it's working. It's just which one, which ad. So fishing was the next biggest thing that we have here that we had never really concentrated an entire ad campaign on. So that's one of our goals, is to have entire campaigns around the big adventures that you can do here.
I think the women's campaign was pretty big, getaway. The women's getaway campaign was pretty big.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The women's campaign, getaway campaign.
Oh, yeah,
Girlfriend's Getaway?
the Girlfriend's Getaway. Yeah, so we did, unfortunately, as the pandemic was hitting, we had done an entire campaign for Girlfriend's Getaways. We were trying to get the women to come and do all these activities. We had them out crabbing, and we went out to the dunes, and we went hiking, and all these things. And I was supposed to unveil it at the Portland Women's Show on the March 14th, the day the state shut down for the pandemic. So it never actually got the big hoorah, but we do have that campaign out as well.
Thanks, Janice. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is public hearing to consider enactment of ordinance to amend Coos Bay Municipal Code Title 17 Development. And I know there's a lot of you here that want to speak to this. And the way we'll do this is we'll get a staff report to explain what this is about. And so Carolyn is Carolyn going to do this, Jim?
Yes, Carolyn's doing it.
So Carolyn Johnson is our planner. She will be making the presentation and explaining this, and then after that, we'll open up to public comments. Okay? All right, Carolyn?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. The council, back in May of this year, provided some direction to the planning commission to take a look at a few things in our development code regarding definitions and some land use standards and land uses. The first item is related to the definition of development that I spelled out in your staff report. Currently, our code does not have a definition of development, and that's kind of unusual. So we believe that it would be a good idea, and the Planning Commission weighed in on this as well, that we have a fairly finite definition of development so that the building community can be assured of, what we consider worthy of a land use permit of some type. So that definition is included in your packet. The second matter the Planning Commission is making a recommendation to you about is modifying in the land use tables, actually not modifying, but adding to the land use tables some clarity on townhouses and their allowed use in the small lot residential and low density residential zones. They were already permitted in The third matter that the Planning Commission is recommending is that you consider limiting maximum lot size for multi-dwelling units. And this is really related to a situation, and this has come up when the maximum lot size is 7,500 square feet, and someone comes in and would like to do a multi-unit project. They have to be told, well, the maximum lot size is 7,500 square feet, so you're going to have to do a lot split. Say they have an acre lot, and you actually have one like this. And after you do that, then you can come back in and make your applications for these multi-unit dwellings. It creates a step that really gets you to the same place if you just remove that maximum lot size. So the Planning Commission is recommending a change there so that you distinguish between the single unit and the duplex dwellings. Keep that maximum lot size for those, but for your multi-unit, which would be 3 or more units, you would eliminate that maximum lot size requirement. There's a map in your staff report and the supplemental report, pull it up here on my computer as well, that identifies the locations of the small lot residential and the low density residential areas in the city. It is noted that the kind of gold salmon color, those are the small lot residential areas, and the more pure yellow color is the low density residential zoning districts. Now, there's one thing that is not in the staff report that I understand may be of some concern, and that is if and how folks might be notified of these projects that would be 3 or more units. We have a whole separate section of our development code, procedures section, that addresses notification requirements based on size of projects, and doesn't necessarily address number or types of units. And we have had some discussion in-house about how that may be a little problematic. There are opportunities to develop that were created when we amended our code relative to trying to provide more housing opportunities, that made it so that instead of every single thing going to the Planning Commission, you could have what's called a Type 2 permit, where you would notify everyone within 300 feet of a property to let them know what was going on. That particular section of the code does not speak to the multi-unit versus single unit that I just described here. So you may want to have a little bit of discussion about that. Where they're interested in looking at that issue, probably another visit back to the Planning Commission would be a good idea. But in essence, what's been advertised as a public hearing for tonight is relative to the 3 items that are on your agenda. And I'm available for any questions, and if folks from the public have questions that you'd like me to answer, I'm certainly happy to respond.
Okay, before we open to a public hearing, council, questions for Carolyn first? No questions? All right, so Carolyn, let me ask you, you suggested that we also revisit something about informing everyone within 300 feet. Can you did I hear that correctly?
Well, what I said is that the type of unit that can ultimately be developed at any location in the city is not really specified in our procedures section on how we notify people. What I'm saying is, if there's a concern about that, we should probably revisit that section of the code. It's not a part of the sections that you're looking at tonight. So I'm just trying to respond
So how do we do it now? Do they get notified if there's a development?
As of now, they would be notified if there was if it was 2 acres or more. But in the cases where somebody wants to develop a 7,500 square foot lot with, 3 multifamily, no, there would not be notice. So that's why I'm saying that if you do want to address that, there would be an opportunity to do that in another part of the code at a future meeting. So
So we
to-
wouldn't address that in today's meeting, is that correct?
no,
Okay.
it hasn't been noticed, but if it does come up as an issue, you certainly have the authority to hold off on taking action until the matter is addressed in another part of the code.
Thank you.
But right now, anything 2 acres or more, there is a public notice put out to everyone around that development area, correct? So this 2 acres or less, there is not
That's correct.
at this moment.
Right now,
Okay.
that is right.
So how much development can happen on 2 acres? I mean, what's with this proposal? I mean, can we, if they're going to build townhouses or multifamily facility there, how many homes could be, or living units could be built in 2 acres approximately?
Oh, I don't know, maybe 12 to 15.
Okay.
That's a lot. That's a lot. And I certainly think that there's merit in revisiting that section of the code about notification and the number of units to be performed.
Okay,
But
but it still would go to the planning commission, am I correct?
it would. We would notify the public if there would be an amendment. If this is your direction after your discussions tonight, we notify the public that there was an amendment pending and for a public hearing, and folks would be given the opportunity to comment and speak to some, options that they might think would be better than what's in the code now.
Okay, all right. Anyone else? All right, so we have a list of people who want to make public comments on this item. Plus, council, I think everyone received some public comments that were emailed in. A lot of these are some of the same ones that have signed up. But we'll start with the first person, that's Kay Martin, and she did submit a public comment that's before us, so. Okay, just just your name and you reside in Coos Bay, and just speak into the mic. As you can tell, if I don't, it's hard to hear, so please.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Huh?
Okay, all right. So I'm very passionate about this because I live on Inlet Loop in the Pacific Crest neighborhood, and it was announced in the last city council meeting that there's going to be 200 units built off of Nautical Drive. That lot has a lot of storm drains on it, and our properties have the drains going down into the land, at least the bottom third of the land. And if those are cut, then our homes are going to, all the slopes that the city maintains, going to fail, and the houses are going to come down. That's just one of the items that I'm pretty passionate about because, my house sits on the slope. The other one is traffic, infrastructure. It can't hold, let's say, there's 400 cars that are in that area for the 200 units. It's not viable to hold that kind of traffic because it's a small community. We only have 36 homes and winding roads, and we're not built for sustaining that type of traffic. The other concern is, I gotta look at my notes, I'm sorry. I did submit comments, and they're a little terse because I was very upset when I read them, and I wrote them, so I apologize for that. But with our easements, if this plan does move forward, they are talking legal action because of all the critical elements of the land and of our relationship with the land. It's deed restricted to our HOA and our ACC, and we have full control over that. So there's a lot to talk about. I just wanted to bring up those points, and that's all I have to say.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I told you that we could interject now or whatever. I'm just going to clear up a little bit here, and then we'll continue on. And I just want to make sure I'm accurate on this, and Carolyn or Roger or Jim can jump in. For this 200-unit development to happen, it can't happen just because of this Title 17, okay? It has to go to the Planning Commission, and it has to be addressed, and they have to meet this criteria. And they can't just cut into this, and there have to be a traffic study. All these things have to happen before the development would happen. Now, I'm not saying that it can't happen, and it possibly would, but they would have to have more than probably one access in or some other way to address the traffic. They can't just, if this is enacted today, whether it is or not, I'm not saying it is going to be, but that's not going to allow this to happen. There's still other processes to go through. The Planning Commission, there will be public hearing, public testimony, maybe multiple ones, because these kind of developments take time, and then it still comes before the City Council. So there's a layer of actions that need to take place before this happens, okay? Anyone, Roger, you want to interject?
No, I think you're correct, Mayor. But for clarity, the city does not have an application for that. The city had a pre-application. No one has submitted an application for that development as of this time.
So what does a pre-application mean?
Pre-application is just an opportunity for someone to put in what they want to do. It brings all of the departments together to say, okay, these are the things that would be involved in moving this forward and all the process that you'd have to go through. It just provides them information. But as of today, there are no applications for that project.
So the criteria that Roger just mentioned is what you just addressed, Kay. You know, traffic, also the sewer. So the staff will tell them, okay, you have to address this, you have to address that, this is what needs to happen. So they kind of line it out to them so the developer knows what they need to do before they move forward. But they're going to have everything kind of in line, and then they would come to the staff and put in an application, and then they have to start addressing how they're going to meet this criteria. That's even before it goes to the Planning Commission. Do you want to add anything, Carolyn?
No, I do not. Email it.
Okay, so the next person is Kim Winker. She also, I believe, has put a public comment in, and it's stating here, and then, so Kim? Hi.
Yes, Kim Winker. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. As I understand now, there aren't any active applications, but knowing that there have been talks with the developer to develop about 200 units on the 31 acres behind our neighborhood, Pacific Crest, which is currently a low-density area, would compromise a lot of things. And whether it's changing the lot size or, definitions, amending these codes would severely impact our neighborhood and our streets, specifically Prefontaine, Nautical Lane, which is a dead end, and Inlet Loop. These neighborhood streets are pretty much at capacity the way they are, because there's only one way in and one way out. And with possible 200 units, high density, a minimum of 2 cars per unit, you're talking 400 to 500 extra cars coming through this neighborhood, which is unimaginable. There's emergency vehicle access. On New Year's Eve, we had an event, had to call the fire department, and that fire truck could not turn around. They had to back up, and it was challenging for them. So again, the one way in and one way out. And on top of it, the noise from all the additional cars. And there's a lot of senior citizens, retirees, there's young children in the neighborhood. And every day I happen to witness multiple dog walkers. So many, walking activities and bicycles. And all that would be compromised on these quiet neighborhood streets. And then finally, this water management issue. Again, my home backs up to this slope. There's all these drains and lines that go to this lower area, and the thought of having slope failure or having your house slide off somewhere isn't appealing. So, proper notification should always be made in these types of instances. So, I moved here from Phoenix, Arizona for a professional opportunity and to kind of live in a quiet area, and I would appreciate, the consideration of how this might affect our livability in this area. Thank you.
Okay. Jim? Oh, you already talked about the library, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, you already talked about the library, you're going to talk about something else?
Chapter 17.
Okay, come on up. Well, it didn't say that here, it says library. And I don't have a form for you, so I never know what you're going to talk about, so I just have to clarify that.
Chapter 17. Actually, she hit the nail on the head. Making your destination livable, all right? It's something that, for some reason, doesn't seem to happen very much in Coos Bay when you live in a residential neighborhood. On Fulton Avenue, you have a little handout here. This is Fulton and Blanco. That's an ignored yield sign. That is underbrush right up to the right-of-way. It's terrible sight lines. That's not the real bad section. Then we go over to the intersection of Blanco and Fulton with no clear sight lines. I have to say this. You'll notice in the background a guy on a bicycle. As soon as I got my camera out, he left. A view on Fulton looking toward the Y intersection. Notice that there's no parked cars at 6 o'clock in the evening on that street. No parked cars. Boy, we're terribly rich. We're like the most wealthy people in town. And there are no extra cars, toy haulers, RVs on that street. All right, want to know why? 7 accidents. 2 totaled cars and a hit house on the lower part below the Y since I've lived here. All right, I complained to the city politely. Rogers told me all the reasons why we can't do a bunch of things. And you want to expand traffic volume, all right, and change around the rules because the state's basically said you have to increase density. The state's told you guys that we need to increase the density. That means that you need to make your destination livable. It means you have to pay attention to the people that live in these neighborhoods and not pay so much attention to some other issues, okay? We expect a livable neighborhood. We expect our decisions from our elected leadership to reflect our values, which is respect for each other, consideration for each other, okay? And many, many times here, the focus is far from it, all right? You'll notice on Kentucky Avenue, when we get to the one that has my pickup in it, okay, that's a constriction. Every neighborhood in Coos Bay has a little tweak to their street system. Some of them were put in with sidewalks, some weren't. Some of them have narrow streets going to wider streets. There's all sorts of little things. You probably, if people parked bad down there on Kentucky, your fire chief probably couldn't get his truck through. Okay, if they didn't hug the curb, he might struggle. All right. You guys need to pay attention because we do need housing. That particular parcel that has been discussed by these people, the folks that live down there, had already had approval for single family years ago. This neighborhood talked about that. We got it set up. We went with it. Anything else but single family down there is just BS. Thank you.
So was there a discussion about single family in this area before? Not during this council, right?
I'm unaware, but there probably was.
But I mean, I don't know nothing about a development on a single family. Did it go for the planning commission? They never put a permit in or anything like that?
There was a development proposal. I don't remember how far it got, but there were plans to paper and there was an application, as I recall. And it included single-family residence and multifamily.
Both?
Both.
Okay, so when was this?
This was probably 15 years ago. 14.
Okay, 15 years ago. All right, not before this council. All right, I just thought maybe, you know, I'm not as sharp as I used to be and I might be forgetting some things. So I just want to make sure that I wasn't forgetting something that Jim brought up at one time. Yeah, I know. I do. A lot of my hair, really? Yeah. Okay. Donald Spire? Hi, Donald. How are you? And did you put?
I did not submit.
Yeah. Well, you have.
I submitted a
Yeah.
form yesterday.
Yeah, he has an application, but nothing with but you're just going to speak to it. That's fine. I just want to make sure.
My name's Don Spear. I appreciate the time to discuss this Title 17. I'm going to feel like a plagiarist because a lot of the
That's right.
things I'm going to say have
Sure.
already been said. I live in Pacific Crest as well. And one of the things that some people don't know is it's a very diverse community. It has medical providers, business professionals, firefighters, Coast Guard families, tradesmen, retirees, families with children. And it's also one of those types of communities that are very desirable, and I've heard that desire in Coos Bay because as you try to attract those types of people, they're looking for places to raise their families. So that's I think, the value of Pacific Crest. It is located in an area that is classified as low density, and many of our neighbors have concerns that have already been brought up, so I'm just going to gloss over those. So first is traffic. We had a meeting with the city on May 9th, and we discussed traffic issues already relevant to Radar Road, to Fulton, to Kentucky, and to Prefontaine. And those are all roads that you have to traverse to get into Pacific Crest. So anything that would be done as an extension of Nautical Lane and would create the kind of traffic that multifamily would create would be an issue that would then transpose onto all of those roads that I just mentioned. Other things regarding the extension, one that isn't talked about a lot is fire. As you start to put more multifamily homes in areas adjacent to wooded areas, man-made fires can occur. It's a known fact. And so that's an issue that I think is not only our concern, but a concern of the tribes that surround our area because they're right there adjacent to us.
1 minute.
Regarding water, it was already brought up. The more homes that are put on, the more runoff you have, and the more management is needed to displace erosion and to sometimes process that water. On May 9th, we had a meeting with a number of managers and department heads. And what I don't think was brought up here is that the 32 acres that are being discussed for expansion are homes are basically part of our HOA. They're deeded to the HRA. And so anything, or HOA, I should say, and so any type of development there would have to fall under our guidelines for architecture and types of houses. And so that's something I just wanted to make sure we brought up. It's a little different because we are an HOA. It's not land that can just be developed without having to go through that. With that, I'm going to cede the floor. Many of the things I said were already stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon Gordon?
I did not turn in the form, but can I still speak? Or?
Yes, of course.
Okay, cool.
Just give us your name and where you reside. What city?
I'm sorry?
Just your name and where you reside. What city for the record, please?
My name is Brandon Gordon. I reside on Inlet Loop in Coos Bay.
Okay.
I think I'm actually one of the newest residents there. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Title 17 issues as it was brought to our attention. My wife and I, we just specifically moved to that neighborhood, fell in love with it when we saw it. And we moved from just down below on Marshall. And, it's a busier down there, children and things. But, you can't beat the view. It's quiet. It's got the nature in the background, and everything is so pristine and wonderful there. And that's really what brought us there, I work for the state, and my wife owns 2 businesses. I think there were good quality people, that the city would want to attract. And, I just don't know. With the noise, I do think that some of that would throw the views. I don't know. It would make it, it's just, the traffic would pollute, it would make noise, accidents, all the things that could come from it. I really don't want to beat a dead horse. I think I'm the last person to speak, but the one thing I did want to bring up is the general location of the lot and it being possibly subdivided for these dwelling, whatever it's called. It's so far away from a major artery that it almost, if we're talking about 200 to 500 vehicles, that seems like a really long way to send them through these smaller streets. Aside from the fire truck issue and everything, even for maybe a Honda Civic, it still seems like just a long way for a lot of traffic to be traveling, and that's, I don't know. I think there's other places that maybe could benefit more from something like that. I don't know why someone would choose that area, to be honest. But I don't know. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask Roger a question
Sure.
in regards to Mr. Gordon's comment? When we say traffic study, so let's just pretend that this development were to happen. Can you break down what that traffic study does look like to help me understand and maybe the group, because I really don't know.
Yeah, probably Jim is more qualified to answer this, but anytime you do a large development, they are required to bring on board a traffic engineer, and they have to do a traffic impact analysis. And I would also say they're not only looking at what are your peak daily runs and how many trips per day, what's your roads like. They do look at other things such as egress, exiting. Is there enough, let's say like Timber Cove had to have an additional emergency exit to get in and out of it. We don't generally just take their word for their impact analysis. We actually have our own traffic engineer that we employ, a consultant that actually reviews that and to see if we can find concurrence or not, or if there's, we believe there might be faulty data. So it is actually very, it's an arduous process, and it's one that recently held up a development, even at Walmart, for a fast food place because of the quality of the traffic impact analysis wasn't up to par.
So we don't have an active application, but if we were to get, and I think I'm using the proper terminology, an active application, we can all agree that it's not a done deal because we have to meet certain criteria, one of them being this traffic pattern.
That's correct, and I think I would like to point out also, this isn't for just this parcel of land. This is
Okay.
about property throughout the city.
Right. Thank you.
And just for a little bit of reference, so Timber Cove, how long have they been in the process of, and they have not even submitted an application yet?
Actually, they've submitted two different applications. The original application was for a 400-unit manufactured home park. And while they were going through the process, and even though they had approved, the market changed on them and they've decided to change. So they had to start all over again. They do have approved land use for a 400-unit stick-built home, but they're still in the, they don't have all of their approvals that they need. So they're still going through a few more processes. In talking with one of their employees just last week, they believe they're a couple years out from even building the first home.
But I guess my point is that it's a tedious process, and it's a lengthy process, and it's a very in-depth process, and we don't, I'll come back to everyone, give them a second chance, but it takes time to get this done, and the city wants to make sure the wastewater was dealt with, the roads were dealt with, the traffic impact. So all that you're bringing up needs to be dealt with, even if it happens. And so we're a long ways from there. And so I just want, as Councilor DeNova mentioned, we're bringing this up so you understand as we go along. So let me get through the list first here. There's a Darren Lynn.
So just for my clarification too,
sure.
because we focused on the Pacific Crest area, what we're considering tonight affects not just that particular item, it affects citywide. And this is just an example from the citizens as to how this could impact an area that's low density.
Correct, you're right.
And
Okay,
then there is
so-
a process
all
as
right,
well, once an application is submitted before it even moves. And that's what you're talking about. It's a very tedious process.
Okay, is there Chad Putman? Okay, Chad, come on up, and then we'll go back around, okay?
I'm Chad Putman. I'm at 1217 Nautical in Pacific Crest. I'm the HOA president, have been for about 6 years now. And I think what we're seeing here is the value that our members in local to that community right there, the value that they put on that specific area. And with the announcement last week, or the ongoing talks about, needing more housing, I spoke to you a few months ago about the short-term rentals there, but it's kind of the confluence of the short-term rentals and the talks about needing more homeless last week at that meeting, and then the announcement that there was a pre-application, and then the changing of some of the rules here kind of raised people's eyebrow, like what's going on here? Is something going to get pushed through really fast? Are we not going to get a say? And you're alleviating a lot of that. But I mean, you can see the value that we put on where we live. It instantly raises our eyebrows. We want to be here, we want to talk, and we want to know. And you've also heard that a few weeks back, we met with a few of the city employees to talk about the drainage issue and our concerns, which they alleviate to a great extent. The water that's on our property drains down to the bottom. One of the things that came up in that meeting, again, and it causes a little bit of a worry, is the employees said that we don't really get involved in HOA issues, which I get, but at the same time, you're not employees. And my question to them at that meeting was, look, if there's some building going on, I'll just speak for myself. I'm a willing partner. I know that we need more housing, but it needs to be done correctly. And if you bring us in on these talks, instead of saying, as a city employee saying, hey, we don't get involved in anything with the HOA, we're staying away from that. And I get some of the reasons that they might say that. It's another one of those things where it looks like, hey, we're changing rules, there's pre-application jumped in. Is there something else going on here? And so I just want to reach out to you guys. I want to reach out to anybody that's working on that project and to say, hey, please reach out to us and bring us along as you go and bring us in on those talks so that there's not any of that vibe, because some people are more sensitive to that than others. And really, we're a willing partner. That is HOA. It's governed by the HOA, the lot that we're talking about. There's specific rules to it. I know that we need more housing in the area, but please bring us along for the planning and the ride, and don't let us find out about it after the fact, because especially after me saying this, it looks like somebody's trying to push in a fast one underneath. I do have the paper that points to what I'm saying, and that it's part of the HOA. I could hand that to you if you're interested. Thank you for your time.
You bet. So first of all, we're not trying to push through anything. This is just one part of low density for the whole city, okay? So we're not trying to hide anything. We're not trying to push anything. In fact, I commend the city staff, obviously meeting with you. I live in an HOA, and they have no right to get involved in my HOA. That's something that we regulate and take care of. And that's what I think the city's saying. That is for you to govern. For the city to get involved in that, that would be something that would be a road that we're going down that we have no right doing. But with that all being said, I can tell you before this goes any further and gets developed, there's a long process, and I was trying to explain that. And the HOA would be involved and notified, because that would be in the planning commission. And so you would, as individuals, because you're with the HOA, also be involved in the process, and that testimony would be there. So I want to assure you, we're not trying to pull a fast one here. We're not trying to pull anything out. If that was the case, you wouldn't be here, and you wouldn't even know about it, and we'd be voting on it. That's not how we do business here. Okay, let me go back. I'm sorry. Yes, I apologize.
Mr. Mayor, isn't that one of the reasons that we probably need to take a look at the notification?
Well, I think that's something that we can discuss at that time when we get into deliberation with the council. But let's hear the rest of the public comment. Kay, come on up, please. Oh, not Kay. You can come up next. Okay, that's fine.
I'm part of the board.
Okay, give us your name and
Sharon Swartling, and I didn't sign up because
that's
I
all right.
wasn't going to talk.
You don't have to sign up. Okay.
There's a few things I'd like to say.
Sure.
We had heard through, I don't know if you've heard about the Neighborhood Watch. Well,
from Jim, I've heard about it.
Okay. I got an email about that, and it says part of this project was to waive them having to have our input. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that seemed to be the understanding of the person who sent the email.
What did it say?
That they were going to, with this 17, they were going to waive the deal of getting our input.
I can
from
tell you that's
our
not true.
development. We wouldn't be given notice or anything.
No,
And so I
that's-
thought, gee, that's really
Well, you heard
unfair.
Carolyn even before we started the public hearing, and I wanted to make sure that it was understood. There would be notification sent out to everyone in that area.
That's not being changed.
No,
Okay.
no,
matter
that,
what.
that stays the same.
That might even be enhanced.
No, that stays the same. Now, what was brought up by Councilor Kilmer, and what was brought up also, if this is for 2 acres or more, notification sent out. The discussion that we had earlier was, did we want to bring up and make sure there's notification and public, notification for 2 acres and less? Now, that was the discussion that came up a little bit earlier. But this 2 acres cannot accommodate 200 places, and that's why I
I
was
would
asking.
certainly hope not.
No,
Be an
it
awful high
can't.
tower.
So, but it's something to
Might
consider.
reach the moon.
Because it would still be, 2 acres would still be 12 to 15 approximately dwellings. And so I think that's something for the council to deliberate and say, do we want that to be part of Title 17 or not? It's not at the moment, but it's something to consider.
Okay. The other thing I was going to point out, and I'm not sure whether Don got that in there or not, on that 32 acres that was deeded to the HOA, that is for single dwellings only, 1 story.
Well, I
So
can't,
that particular parcel should not even be in consideration.
I think they would have to, Roger, you can step in. I believe that they would have to deal with the HOA and meet that criteria. Roger?
So I am not a city attorney, and our city attorney is on vacation, but I will tell you that House Bill 2001 changed state law across the state that you could put duplexes in single-family residential lots throughout the state.
But do they still not have to meet the HOA regulations?
That's a civil matter that would have to be handled through the civil courts.
So,
But
So
the
we need to have a
HOA is in
court order.
conflict with state law in that manner.
Well, we do have a lawyer,
well, no, yes, so, I'm not
just in case you're wondering.
but before you get to that point, it's a long ways away. Now, I'm not saying that those aren't valid points and they need to be considered, and, so obviously, as I mentioned earlier, HOAs, we're not gonna get right in the middle of. But we have our city attorney that can review it and make sure, and the planning commission would, addressing that also, before it even came back to
We're
us.
going to hold you to it.
Well, no, it has to go through that. I can guarantee you it would have to go through that.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, anyone that I haven't heard from first? All right. Kay, you want to make another comment? Did you want to make a comment?
Me? I put my name down on that thing. I'm Gary Lynn. You said my name?
Yeah, and that was earlier, I opened the public testimony and you didn't come up. So let us deal with this first and then we'll get to you after that, okay?
There's a process I didn't know about. Sorry.
That's all right, no problem. Okay, so anyone I didn't hear from? Okay. Are you tied to this guy here, okay?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm from Jersey, so.
All right.
My name's Marty Barillo. This is probably more towards you. The property that we're talking about is surrounded by both the Confederated and the Coquel, okay? From what I understand, about 20 years ago, or whatever the heck it was, they had to get permission from the tribes to put a road in. And I understand it was like an act of Congress. Now I understand that it's even gotten worse because the feds are so involved with what happens on these reservations or on their lands that they're under a microscope with this. So the possibility, like this gentleman said earlier about the traffic, okay, putting another road in on the native lands, I don't think it can happen personally, but how does that work?
They can certainly, the tribe can certainly agree to put a road in. In fact, the tribe is looking at building residential units in that area themselves.
Down towards where they are, or?
Correct. So
Okay.
they may allow roads, but that's not a topic that's even been broached, and I'm sure it would take time, probably immense amount of time.
The other thing that Don didn't mention, Don and I met with the water quality guy from the tribe, Coquel, and they're having problems because that water drains in the first creek and it goes right down their lands, and what they're starting to find is microbes in the water that shouldn't be there. I have no idea biology. I sell dead fish, so.
I'm with you.
But you know what I'm saying? So that's what he's finding down there, so I don't know what that's all about. So, and they're saying it's all because of this drainage that's going on. So, just something to talk about. Anyway, thanks.
You bet, thank you.
Roger,
right.
isn't it true, though, that the tribes are their own governments? So I think the two parcels of land that this gentleman is talking about, both of those parcels of land are in trust. And so since the tribe is their own government, they decide how they will manage those lands. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank
But
you.
what I think we were referring to is that if the traffic analysis came in and it stated that it needed more than one road, they would have to get approval from the Coquel tribe or the Confederated tribes to allow that road to go through. And I think that's what he was referencing.
I'm just educating
no,
Mr. Mayor. I
no,
already know
you're
the
right.
response. I'm just making sure everyone knows that
Oh,
the
sure.
tribes are,
No.
those parcels of land are in trust.
Did you understand that to be the case? Okay, all right. Anyone else that wants to speak that hasn't? Come on, if you can just give us your name, please, and where you reside.
Sherry Horn, I live on Inlet Loop, down in the same Pacific Crest neighborhood. So I'm curious, some of the land behind us is also city-owned. I know they cleared one of the mountains to buy a new fire truck, like a year or so ago. And I'm not sure where that butts up to the property lines or how it fits in.
I'm not sure either. I do know that between the city of Coos Bay and the water board, we own 1,600 acres up on the watershed. Those acres are not developed, they're not meant for development, but we do a sustained harvest management program up there where we cut approximately 40 acres every 2 years, and we use those funds derived from that to pay for capital expenses such as a fire truck. But this hearing really wasn't about that specific parcel, it was about parcels throughout the
Does
city.
that parcel fall into the high-density area as well, the orange shaded area?
No, that's part of the watershed.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. And so I think part of what you're talking about, it gets logged, portions get logged every year. Okay. All right, Kay, did you want to come back up or not?
I just wanted to say that it's deed restricted, and of course, it's not, it's the developer, and that's what have to go through it, but I'll probably end up in litigation.
Well, if it gets that far, so, yeah.
If it gets that.
Right, yes.
Can you guys come up to the mic, please, for the people online?
We can't hear, and there's people online.
Don Spear, I live on Inlet Loop.
Sure.
I believe the reason we have such a large audience, one of the reasons is that at last week's meeting regarding low-income housing, there was a question brought up to this group. And someone asked the question, well, are there any plans for this type of housing or that housing? And I think it was quoted that our area was quoted as a potential area that was in preliminary conversations. So the reason we're so caught up in this thing is that we were brought up in the context of that conversation.
So what I can clarify for you, there are 2 low-income housing projects that are planned in the city. One is in Inglewood at the old Inglewood School or the old Pennsylvania School, and the other one is up by the hospital by the Gloria Day Lutheran project. We did talk about housing and the number of different potential housing projects around the city. One of them was the Timber Cove, that's the 400-unit housing project. This one was mentioned that there was a pre-application that was put in. Sometimes pre-applications, though, that's the last time you ever hear from them. No one knows what's happening there, but there are a lot of other small subdivisions. And when I say small, anywhere from 11 to 16 homes.
That's why I wanted to clarify, because I thought it was odd that a specific location, that nautical lane was actually mentioned in the context of that, but preliminarily before anything had been done.
I don't remember that being mentioned. The 200.
It's on the recording. It's
Yeah,
it's
there
quoted.
was the 200 units.
I
I
probably
remember.
did say that we had a pre-application for a proposed 200-unit housing development off Nautical Lane.
Okay.
That's why
Okay.
we're here.
Well, that's fine.
Understandable.
All right. Okay, anyone else? No? James?
The room would have been full, but we work, and we have people that are taking care of family members, and you probably would have filled every chair had people not had other commitments. We have people that are going to Eugene and Portland this evening to catch flights. We're working people. We are communicating with you. We expect you to communicate with us. We don't agree. Stephanie and I agree on very few things, but we can talk. Okay? All right? And we expect some communication. Housing's important to us. You already have sitting on a file, single-family housing, shovel-ready spot. All right? Go sell it. Develop that. Put in what was planned. Get the groundwater taken care of. Do what you need to do. God knows you gave boatloads of money to a guy that hasn't did anything but push dirt around and file plans. Okay? Get it built. Single family, it's ready to go. The next time someone wants to put in townhouses, you take a look at your transportation plan. You figure out if those roads will take it. Then you figure out a way to fund it and do it. All right? I'm tired of this. You've needed housing since I lived here. I've been here 20 years. You've hemmed, hawed, chased dreams, okay? Do it. You have a plan sitting on the shelf. God knows it's been torn apart enough times. That thing was a dumpster fire when it was designed and developed, all right? So everybody knows the plans are out there. Go find somebody to put the single-family houses on there and get it done. All right, go find somebody to do down at Kentucky, but you finish the silly roads so it isn't a mess. All right?
Thank you, Jim.
I want things done.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask you a question?
Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, all right, go ahead.
Could you remind me, are we developers, are we responsible for developing houses in the city of Coos Bay?
No, we're not. And so, Jim, I think Councilor DeNova's right on. It's not our so for everyone's understanding, we don't go out and find a developer. We help a developer come after they get the application, and we tell them what they need to do with the pre-application. Jim's referring to something 15 years ago. This council wasn't sitting here 15 years ago. So that's immaterial. And if they come forth, fine. And the traffic analysis is not for us to go and do. We're not going to take your taxpayer dollars and do a traffic analysis. Well, we'll do a traffic analysis, but we're not going to fix the traffic for a developer. That's for the developer to pay and do, just like they're doing at Coos Bay Village. That's like what they're going to do at Timber Cove. They have to do that. That's not us. And I think you would be upset, and I know I would be upset, if another council was spending my money, my tax dollars, for a developer. That's not the case, okay? So, you know, we are doing something, and I think we've done a lot. And we know that we need 500 homes to satisfy what we need in this market. If the container facility goes like it's talked about, in 4 years, they're talking another 500 employees. Another 500 homes are needed here. But to do that, they got to start building in 2 years. In 2 years, we need housing for those workforce. So there's things that need to happen. Yes, we're looking for housing development. I mean, and we're limited what areas we have. I can get into a lot of discussion on this, and I'll be glad to do it. And so any of us are available for this discussion. We had the townhouse meeting, and on that, Stephanie, myself, we all said that we're available for a discussion. I've had 2 or 3 calls. I had a meeting today with Roger Craddock and myself about housing development. That individual is going to get with us, and we'll bring contractors in. We'll talk about that. So that's how we do it. We're showing what we can do and hopefully help them get there, but we don't do it for them.
But we do try to provide incentives, correct? And I think that those are some of the things that we've done over the
Mr. Mayor,
years.
I'm getting confused, though. We're getting down to the specifics of planning, which there's a whole process for that. What
But
we're
they're-
here to consider right now
Right, but
is something that gets us in line
But-
with what the state is saying and is recommended by our planner.
But Stephanie, Brett came up and made a comment about something, and we're just clarifying that. So that's what's happening.
Okay, but I'm
All
just
right.
trying to make sure
So
that I
anyway,
stay where I'm.
so I hope that clears everything up. And so we're going to deliberate this. So Carolyn, are you on board? Oh, hi, Carmen, do you have a comment? No?
Mayor, can I ask a question here?
Sure.
I'm sure I have comments, but let's go ahead and start the conversation, and I'll jump in.
Okay, Rob.
So to Councilor Kilmer's point, you said that there was a pre-application, but there's not a full application?
No, pre-application is just a process for a proposed development to come forward and get some preliminary information about what would be required. It is not an in-depth review because there's nothing really in-depth to review. It's just to tell them what's the process, what may be required, what are the current codes. So that's about as far as it goes. And pre-applications are required before something can move forward. We've had pre-applications in the past that occurred, but then never materialized to a project.
And I'm guessing, Rob, that in 15 years ago, the single family that James is referencing probably had a pre-application, but they didn't follow through with it. So it's the same type of thing.
Well, that's my question, is it, if this chapter 17 doesn't pass tonight, is there anything that prevents that pre-application from moving forward?
To be honest with you, I don't know enough about that project because I'm not involved in the pre-application process. Carolyn may have information as to that.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Carolyn. Can you clarify, if this Title 17 wasn't even before us, could the development still happen?
Well, it would have to go through an entire process, beginning with pre-app, as Rob just mentioned. We did hold a pre-app back in April. The pre-application conference notes were made available to the applicants, they're public record, and they identified all the hoops and studies and requirements that they would have to attend to before they could submit an application that the city would even look at. So, I guess the answer to your question is maybe yes, but, with all those caveats.
But what I'm saying is Title 17, whether we approved it or didn't approve it this evening, that process, that developer can still move forward. In fact, they even went through a pre-application, right? So Title 17 is not going to change the development.
No, it would not.
Okay.
And the size of that pre-proposal, call it pre-proposal, because we don't have a permit application here, is large enough that it would trigger a land use process where the planning commission would need to be involved. There would be lots of notification as well, but that would be at the very tail end of, getting it in front of the city. There would be a lot to do. I worked with my staff, as we also worked with engineering and operations and building on the Timber Cove project application. And it was 2 or more years in the making, just working with them, going through processes, identifying technical information, double checking that, peer review, I could go on and on. So land use development is, land development is not simple. There's a lot to it. So I'll stop there unless you have any other questions.
Rob, more questions about that?
Not right now.
Stephanie, anything? Carmen?
I'd just like to add that during that process, once these applications, if they inevitably did get put in and submitted, and they made it all the way to the planning commission, those meetings are also open to the public. So, here we are having a discussion in public with everybody, and I just want to put everybody to ease that this is a very
And to Carolyn's point that she made earlier, and Ann Rogers, this is a requirement by the state to have this consideration in code.
Well, I might want to add some clarity. There was a requirement by the state to add more housing choices. The city has met, and I believe we are in compliance with House Bill 2003 currently. This adds one more option that's out there. And again, it is to provide additional options to create or reduce barriers so that you can have increased housing in your city.
But before that would even happen, there is a process that is very transparent.
Most certainly.
We're done, I'm sorry. Sarah, did you have a comment?
I do. I think that, you know, I couldn't have said it better than Carmen. I think that was solid. I just want to echo the opportunity for the community to engage and for us to provide transparency. And we have a housing crisis. We're going to continue to have that. We're seeing wildfires in communities surrounding us. We are going to be an area where people are going to want to move to and continue to want to move to. And so supply is going to continue to be an issue, and we are going to have to find a way to meet that demand. And as transparent as possible during that process.
Okay, anyone else? So I think it's important that, I don't know how the council wants to move forward, but this amendment is for the whole city and not just this. And it's to create availability for more housing. And as Councilor Kilmer said, this is an agenda and a goal item that we've been facing for years. James referenced it earlier. There's been a housing crisis forever, and there has. And we've been working on it. And we are getting there, and we've accomplished some things. But housing developments take time, and getting it done takes time. And so that's what this is about. But the process is not going to be a hidden process. It's got to go through all kinds of development. The traffic will be addressed. The water will be addressed. Access will be addressed. As you mentioned, they're going to have to contact one of the tribes to even probably get access through there, which is another process. But all that has to be done before this development can even move forward. And they're going to have to address that. So we're not going to just let things build anymore without a process and a planning commission, multiple hearings. This would take a lot of time. The only thing I think that we need to decide tonight as the council is if we want to address what Carolyn brought up, do we want to make sure that for 2 acres or less, there's going to be a notification. We know that anything over 2 acres, there's going to be a notification to everyone around. So I guess that's the only thing I think that we need to address, that in my opinion, tonight. How do we want to address that or not address it? So that's it.
That's just for multi-unit dwellings.
For anything for 2 acres and less.
I'm a big proponent of communication. That's one of the reasons I ran was transparency. And I think even though it may be a cost and expense to the city, I think notification to people who are impacted is important.
So do you want to put this on, refer this back so that that's addressed in this bill and then come back to us in the next council meeting? Or do you want to go ahead and have that addressed at another meeting?
Roger, were you going to say something?
You certainly could refer this back to the Planning Commission and ask for some additional clarification on notifications. It probably couldn't come back to you by the next meeting. It would take time for that to go through the process of the Planning Commission and the proper notices and then to come back. You're probably talking, and Carolyn, you can clarify, but I'm thinking it's a couple months.
What is your recommendation, Carolyn?
Maybe October before, well, at the earliest, send it back to Planning Commission in October, because in August and September, they're going to be busy with the housing needs analysis. I don't want more on them than that. But this certainly does fall in line with the work that they're doing now. So if you want to be done in October, I'll be back to you in November. But the direction we would seek from you specifically is that they take a look at the procedures section of the code to make sure that there was transparency for folks for under 2 acres of development as to what could be developed, but with notification. So I think that would kind of be your marching order.
So,
That's
first of all, I think everyone on the council wants everything to be very transparent. But that being said, Carolyn, so if we went ahead and adopted this tonight, can we say that we want and direct you to go back to the planning commission and bring that piece forward and make sure that the other piece for 2 acres and less is going to be notified? Or are you suggesting, I think Councilor Miles asked your opinion, or should we send it back and then have it all come back as one? I mean, we want this to be addressed.
Yeah, I think you should have it come back as one. I think, though, it would be very helpful for the planning commission to know that you reached a general consensus on these particular changes.
Okay.
And that your concern at this point is related to the procedures for which these would be carried out.
Well, I for one do agree with that consensus, I agree. And the rest of the councilors is up to them to say, but I want that piece to be in there and notification.
Are we asking for consensus tonight, Roger, or is there a motion?
That's not a motion.
I think what Carolyn's asking, if there's some consensus so that they can share if any additional changes need to be made by the planning commission.
Thank you.
I mean, we can,
Related to the notice.
I mean, we can go ahead and adopt this tonight and then still have that come back to us, or we can, as Carolyn suggested, have the whole thing go back to the planning commission, then have the whole bill come back to us.
What would your concern be if we did that, Carolyn? If we went ahead and adopted and, or if we didn't, what is your concern?
If you adopt it all at one time, it's just a little tidier for us. Plus, the applicant would be subject to a little more stringent rules that we have in place now. So, about the multifamily, because they would have to go through a 2-part process now. And so, I think it'd just be cleaner if you waited, but if you wanted to adopt this now, you can. And you could provide some direction to your community development director that, in the interest of transparency, he does have the authority to bump up the review for less than, up to 2 acres to a type 2 instead of a type 1. And type 2 requires the notification. So that 2 would suffice. Sorry to muddy the waters, you just have a few options.
Okay, so adopting this without the notification streamlines the process between now and the next time we looked at it. Otherwise, there's still a restrictive process that a developer would have to go through if it wasn't adopted. And it's actually more restrictive.
Well, more notification, I guess.
You have to go through the process basically twice to get that out of the 500 square feet and then come back in with your application. There are people knocking down doors right now to do this, but you still never know who's going to come in, so anyway.
Oh, she knew exactly where I was going with my question.
So, okay, so council, how do you want to proceed? I'm willing to take direction here.
Carmen had a question, I think.
I just wanted to give my thoughts. I'd like to move forward with pulling it all together and just doing it once, throwing it back to the planning commission to put those revisions in, just to make it tidier. But yeah, I'm in favor of the change, and this is a perfect example of how slowly the wheels turn here. We're talking about it at the beginning of August. The next time we will see this will be sometime in November. And that's just for this small portion. So things take time and it's difficult. And so for those who say we are moving slowly all the time, trying to address things, we're trying to do it transparently, and we're trying to do it carefully and thoughtfully. So that's what I have to say.
I support Councilor Matthews.
Rob?
Should we just make a motion and get this over with?
Well, there's no motion to
There is
make. You
no
have to
motion.
adopt the ordinance, or you don't
Well,
adopt it.
we can make a motion to send it back to the planning commission.
Do we need a motion?
Or
Carolyn,
just-
do we need a motion?
I would suggest that.
You do suggest it?
Yes.
Okay. Rob?
I'll make a motion to send this back to the planning commission to look at the procedural process with the message that the council supports the planning commission's recommendations.
Second.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, any other comments or discussion? So I just want to make one. So Janet wrote us some information on a public comment form. I don't know where she is, but I think it's very apropos what she stated in this one. I'm going to go cherry pick something, but it says, while expanding housing opportunities in the city is much needed endeavor, it must be done with careful thought and comprehensive city planning. And I think that's what we've done, and that's what we're doing. So that's the end of my comments. Any other comments? Roger, you have something?
No, I'm just going to remind you to take the vote.
I will. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none? It's passed. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your testimony and your time. Appreciate it. Pardon?
How are you going to notify us?
You'll be notified through the planning commission if it go, I mean, on this coming back?
No, on somebody purchasing the property to develop it.
That's what we're sending back to the.
That'll
planning-
happen through a notice. The planning commission, it's automatically done. So everyone will be sent out a notice that it's happening, and they want your input.
We're not
You'll
doing-
get,
yeah, we're
you'll
not-
get a mail, you'll get a letter in the mail. Yeah.
Oh, Carolyn is speaking.
Please email me and I will make sure you're notified.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Uh-huh. You know, we'd like to see you around here more often, just not on these kind of subjects, you know. You can show up anytime. All right. So, yeah, so Darren, do you want to make your comment now? Sure.
Darian Lynn, I live in North Bend, Oregon. And so my issue was, I signed the thing. What else was I supposed to do?
Pardon?
I'm sorry.
So he signed the public.
Oh, I know, I did, I got it right here. But what happened is, I asked if there's public comments that's not related to this section. And I
Okay.
thought I'd taken everyone, obviously we skipped you, so no problem.
Sorry about that. So you'll notice I wrote down homelessness as my primary concern.
I can't hear.
Hello?
Speak into the mic.
Yeah, there you go.
I wrote down homelessness as my primary concern.
Right.
I feel as if the ability for us to actually address homelessness in the area is going to be hampered by the fact that Coos Bay and North Bend and Charleston are all like separate, jurisdictions.
Correct.
And the homeless can just walk across whatever line, and technically they're not in violation of whatever laws you have in whatever area. And so I feel as if now is a perfect time to try to essentially merge Coos Bay, North Bend, and Charleston into one jurisdiction. And I know that's been attempted before multiple times and failed every time. But I feel like the particular effect of the pandemic and the homelessness crisis as it's increasing will incentivize this merging, because I would like to know for a fact that no matter where I am in this general area, I'm not dealing with the bureaucracy of 3 different jurisdictions. Not to mention that if we were to merge into one area, Coos Bay, North Bend, and Charleston, I'm pretty sure we would be in the top 10 most populated cities in the entire state of Oregon, which would allow us to put more pressure on the state of Oregon to pay for, our infrastructure and, the cost of housing the homeless, I really want to address this issue because I feel like at least in America, a certain minimum of housing should be available to people who need it. A minimum, a bare minimum. I'm not talking luxury apartments or mansions. I'm just saying, like, a bare minimum of shelter. And we need to start that conversation somewhere. And I want to start that conversation in this area. We could call it, North Charleston Bay, and that would be the name of the new city. Something like that. And I feel like if North Charleston Bay were to lead Oregon, and Oregon could lead the country in actually housing the homeless. And so what I'm proposing, frankly, bottom line is I would like to volunteer my time, or at least work with the city council in some way to essentially go door to door and talk to people in the area about, how they... how they feel about this proposal of actually finally merging North Bend, Coos Bay, Charleston, possibly up to, Saunders Lake, why not, into one jurisdiction. And if we could finally use our status as one of the top 10 most populous cities in the state to actually, address homelessness, and not only in our area, but Oregon and indeed the country. What I want to know is if it's possible to work with you in some capacity, that I could volunteer my time, or even, some kind of a budget could be allocated to me to help, go around town and advertise for this. Because I understand that you guys have some kind of homelessness council that has a funding from the county to address homelessness in the area. Only 10,000 of that would be necessary to, put some posters up and, maybe. Well, I wanted to talk to you about that.
All right, so are you done?
Yes.
All right, so thank you. So go and sit down and I'll address your question, okay?
Okay.
I'll start it out, and then if anyone else wants to chime in. I think that we definitely need housing for the homeless. As far as consolidation, the last time this was tried is when I was serving as mayor in 2000, whatever it was, 6, I guess, maybe? 4. But I'm going to tell you that I will never support that again. I will never advocate for it. If citizens want to do it and they take it out to a vote and it happens, that's great. But it's not something that, first of all, we could not give you funds to go out and do that. That's not within our preview to do. That's not something how we can spend the tax dollars. It might be a good idea. It might pass, but it's something that I will not support at this time. I think where we're moving and working together is where I will continue to suggest. We've done that in multiple ways, the Water Board, the Visitor Convention Bureau, and other ways we've done that. And that's how I see us moving forward together as a community. Consolidation is something that I don't think will ever happen. And so I'm not going to upset people and start down that road. I just will never support it. I'm not sure how the rest feel. I don't know. You want to chime in? You support consolidation, anyone?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of supporting or not supporting consolidation, Mr. Mayor. I think, to your point, the city of Coos Bay could not be involved in that, and it really would need to come from the citizens. And so I think you bring up some valid points. I've lived in this community for 26 years, and when I first got here, I heard topics of consolidation, and I can tell you, I wasn't nearly as informed as I am today, but it affected relationships in this community, and so there were a lot of bad feelings, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mr. Mayor, but my assumption would be, I think probably you think we're more effective with how we operate government today with the 2 separate cities. So, but I commend you for your thoughts, and you're absolutely right. We would probably get more funding and more development if we were one city, but it's not ours to decide. It's really the citizens to decide. And so I encourage you, if you're interested in supporting that, maybe you form your own group to see if there's interest in something like that.
So you'd have to go get a referendum. You have to get so many signatures on the ballot, and you have to get them from both cities. Nicole, right down at the end there, she, I think, could probably help you get the necessary documents, what you would need or where to go, and direct you. There is a process. But the city itself can't get involved to do it.
Thank you, though, for bringing it up.
You're not the first, and you won't be the last, and it's going to be discussed many times. And, sometime it might happen, but, I don't know. So, anyone else on this? Okay.
I think Councilor DeNovo said what I would say.
Yeah.
It's probably going to have to be led by a grassroots effort,
No.
citizen.
I can.
Real quick.
Okay, come on up.
Okay. Larry Ruth, Tuesday, Oregon. Basically, we do have a housing problem here. And I've been doing real estate for 50 years, probably been the most, probably the longest landlord out there. It's actually been an active landlord through the whole thing. But one thing about anything, and it's the United States, here, or anyplace else, if you want something to go away, you tax it and regulate it, and it'll go away.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda, consideration to award the South 5th Street Bennett Avenue Storm Drain Project construction contract to Knife River. Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. City staff identified a major deficiency in the storm drain system at and around the intersection of South 5th Street and Bennett Avenue. Due to the damage caused to the intersection surface by the storm drain deficiencies, it made the most sense to replace the entire intersection and install new ADA ramps while the storm drain repairs were being made, or are being made. The storm drain improvements consist of replacement of approximately 140 feet of 8-inch pipe and 80 feet of 12-inch pipe. Design is complete and the project was advertised for construction bids on June 29th. Bids were opened on July 26th and 2 bids were received. Knife River for $299,948 and Lasky Clifton for $469,597. The engineer's estimate was $277,650. Last week when we were here, we were talking about a different project. I told you folks that the engineer's estimate was $311,000. That was with admin and contingency. And so when we're comparing them to actual bids, we usually take those numbers out. So there's the discrepancy. The responsible bidder is Knife River and in line with the engineer's estimate. As a result, staff is recommending moving forward with this repair, plus a 15% contingency for an amount not to exceed $344,940. One thing to note, the construction contract allows for the intersection closure at 5th and Bennett and a portion of the road leading up to the intersection. The road closure is anticipated to not exceed 15 days and will be open on weekends and holidays. The city manager approved the road closure because of the cost reduction. It's estimated to be about $50,000. It also reduces potential safety hazards to vehicle and pedestrians. Staff will coordinate with the fire department, police department, and bus company prior to closing the road. So the estimated cost for construction is $299,948. With a 15% contingency, we have a total of $344,940. The project will come from 2 funds. So in your staff report, it says that the Water Quality Improvement Fund 29, the stormwater collection system, will fund $244,648. That actually didn't include contingency. It should say $289,640. The other portion of the funding is from URA dollars, Urban Renewal Agency dollars, and that's for $55,300. So, if it pleases council, award construction contract to Knife River for the South 5th Street and Bennett Ave storm drain project for an amount not to exceed $344,940, which includes a 15% contingency.
Council, how would you like to proceed?
I'll move to award the construction contract to Knife River for the South 5th Street and Bennett Avenue storm drain project for the amount not to exceed $344,940, which includes a 15% contingency.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to award the 5th Street and Bennett Avenue storm drain project construction contract to Knife River. Any other comments, discussion?
Carmen.
Excuse me, Carmen. Yes.
Just wondering if there's any potential conflict of interest as the adjacent property owner to this project?
No, you may have a perceived conflict of interest, but you do not have an actual conflict of interest because you're not financially benefiting from the project.
So you can vote on it and be happy that that gets fixed. You won't have to surf on the street anymore. All right.
Just one more question.
Sure.
When do you anticipate work to begin on that?
It typically takes about 40 days to execute a contract once we get notice of award from you folks, and then we'll have a pre-con, and then they'll give us a schedule. They actually have 90 days to complete the project once we've been giving them a notice to award.
Okay,
So-
and I noticed that you mentioned this busing company, so this is probably
Yes.
likely to start in September.
Absolutely.
Just be in mind that the parade and cruise, I don't know if that's going to be impacted. I know it's not on those routes, but they
Yeah.
might be feeders.
So the road will be open on weekends and holidays, so I imagine the parade will occur on the weekend.
Shouldn't affect it, okay. All right.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Okay, public hearing to consider approval of the silo ban ballot title. Mouthful. Approval would require adoption of resolution 22-22. Nicole, are you who's addressing this?
Well, we might take a couple of us, but what I'd like to introduce is normally we know by council rules that you should receive, a part of this package is an ordinance, and you would normally receive those a week in advance. So part of tonight's discussion will get to have a full reading of the ordinance for our rules. So what has been presented to you tonight is just an overview of this state law that was recently passed, which is currently in the works with the rules. The state's putting together the rules for that, and we're kind of awaiting that. And so, given some advice, League of Oregon cities and some other communities have taken a couple of different stances. We're proposing that we would put a ban on psilocybin-related businesses within the city of Coos Bay while we await for those state rules to be compiled. That ban, I believe, is for a 2-year period. That's hopefully going to allow the state that time necessary. We can address what we want to do after that point. So what you have before you, because there is a tight time frame to get something on the ballot, if that's something you would like to do, we need to get that to the county, I think within a couple of weeks. So we need to kind of look at this and decide what we're going to do. So you have both an ordinance and a resolution. The resolution speaks to the actual ballot title language that we would recommend sending to the county. We'll put this before the voters to determine whether or not we should place a ban on psilocybin-related businesses within the city of Coos Bay.
Okay, so I'm going to open a public hearing, so the public hearing will be, make a public comment on the psilocybin ballot title. This is suggesting that we would ban it, and it would go on the ballot to ask the voters to ban this, any city businesses dealing with this. Any comments?
Mr. Mayor, before you open the public hearing, I think we should probably read the ordinance in its entirety.
Before we vote on it?
No, before you have the public hearing,
Okay.
since it didn't get out 10 days in advance.
Okay.
All right, so here we go. It's not horrible. It's a couple pages, but. So, an ordinance declaring a ban on psilocybin service centers and manufacture of psilocybin products. Whereas, in November 2020, Oregon voters approved ballot measure 109, known as the Oregon Psilocybin Service Act, codified as ORS 475A, which allows for the manufacture, delivery, and administration of psilocybin at licensed facilities. And whereas ORS 475A.235 provides that the Oregon Health Authority will regulate the manufacturing, transportation, delivery, sale, and purchase of psilocybin products and the provision of psilocybin services in the state. And whereas the Oregon Health Authority has initiated a rulemaking process to implement the state's psilocybin regulatory program and intends to begin accepting applications for psilocybin-related licenses on January 2nd, 2023. And whereas, as the Oregon Health Authority has not completed the rulemaking processes for implementing the state's psilocybin regulatory program, and the city of Coos Bay is uncertain how the manufacture, delivery, and administration of psilocybin at licensed psilocybin facilities will operate within the city. And whereas ORS 475A.718 provides that a city council may adopt an ordinance to be referred to the electors of the city prohibiting the establishment of state licensed psilocybin product manufacturers and or psilocybin service centers in the area subject to the jurisdiction of the city. And whereas the city of Coos Bay City Council believes that prohibiting psilocybin product manufacturers and psilocybin service centers within the city's jurisdictional boundaries to enable the adoption of the state's psilocybin licensing and regulatory program and to allow the city to adopt reasonable time, place, and manner regulations on the operation of psilocybin facilities is in the best interest of the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Coos Bay. And whereas the City Council seeks to refer to the voters of Coos Bay the question of whether to establish a ban on state-licensed psilocybin product manufacturers and psilocybin service centers within the city's jurisdictional boundaries. Now therefore, the City of Coos Bay ordains as follows. Section 1, Prohibition. The establishment of psilocybin product manufacturers licensed under ORS 275A.290 and psilocybin service centers licensed under ORS 475A.305 is prohibited in the city of Coos Bay. Section 2, referral. This ordinance is referred to the electors of the city of Coos Bay for approval at the next statewide general election held on November 8th, 2022. Section 3, effective date. This ordinance takes effect and becomes operative 30 days after the day on which it is approved by a majority of the voters. The foregoing ordinance was enacted, I guess this is only valuable if you guys make the enaction, but it would be enacted by the City Council of the City of Coos Bay the second day of August, and we will state the vote should you choose to do so.
So it has not been determined that it's going to be enacted until after we vote on it. So anyway, but I'm opening the public hearing. Comments? Janice?
So I was listening to your reading, and nowhere in there did it say the ban would only be for 2 years. So my question is, why would we want to not allow a manufacturer of a pharmaceutical product that would bring jobs to our community, in our community, unless that does say 2 years, and banning it until we know what the state's going to do? But that's not what it said. So my concern is that we are putting a ban on a product that is a pharmaceutical, that would be a pharmaceutical company doing manufacturing of that product. It's not like marijuana, it's not like dispensaries. You have to have licenses and rules and regulations from the federal level as well as the state level. So
No.
my concern is that
It's federally against the law.
okay. Okay, so, yeah, but to manufacture any kind of pharmaceutical, there is some, I mean, this is one of those gray areas, but do we want to ban a manufacturing of something that would bring good paying jobs to our community? I understand a 2-year until the state gets their act together, but that's not what the ordinance said.
I know, my feeling is, and I'm not sure how the rest of council feels, the reason that we went with permanently is because I'm not sure when the state's going to come, and that thing's hanging out there for 2 years, and then we have to address it again, go through it. I'd rather have this be the case, and if we want, then we can put it back to the voters and let them make that decision. I don't have to go out again and do it. That's my take on it.
Well, it'll also be the voters' decision this time around as well.
Correct, but I mean,
Right.
they'd have to, if they wanted to, the voters could rescind it again. We could ask them to do that, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
That's
was
my
my
take.
comment.
Anyone else want to chime in? Okay. All right. Anyone else? Public comments? All right. Hearing none. So we do the ordinance first and then the resolution?
Do we have to close the public hearing?
Oh,
Mr.
close the
Mayor?
public
Sorry.
hearing. Resolution or ordinance first?
I would do the ordinance first. I would just add a clarification for Melissa's. We had 2 ordinances tonight, and we do a little bit of administrative work beforehand. We'll have to renumber this ordinance since you guys did not take action on the first one.
So the resolution first then, Melissa? I mean, the ordinance first?
Yeah.
Okay. So do I have a motion to pass the ordinance on this?
I move we enact the ordinance regarding psilocybins to place the ban psilocybin-related businesses within Coos Bay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to enact the ordinance declaring a ban on psilocybin service centers and the manufacture of psilocybin products. Melissa, roll call, please.
An ordinance declaring a ban on psilocybin service centers and the manufacture of psilocybin products. Counselor DeNovo?
Aye.
Counselor Kilmer?
Aye.
Counselor Matthews?
Aye.
Counselor Miles?
Aye.
Counselor Stevens?
Aye.
Mayor Benetti?
Aye.
Ordinance number 560 has been duly enacted.
I'll move to adopt Resolution 22-22, approving the ballot title in addition to the November 8th, 2022 election, and enact the ordinance to place a, do I have to say that part of it?
No.
No, okay. Can I say that again, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
I would like to make a resolution to adopt resolution, I would like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 22-22, approving the ballot title and the addition to the November 8th, 2022 election.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for adoption of Resolution 22-22. Any other comments or discussion by anyone? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Okay, City Manager's report. Roger?
Yes, I have just a couple things. I wanted to let you know that the estimated delivery for the new boat ramp docks that were ordered 5 months ago is scheduled to be towards the end of this month or the beginning of next month.
Happy day.
So it'll be happy to see those. Staff has completed the repair plans, or we have those in order for the Empire Fishing Pier. But we cannot commence that work because the state requires you to only do work within the in-water work window. So that work cannot start until October.
I'm sorry, Roger, can you say that again? So we're going to get the docks, but we can't put them in until October?
Oh, I'm sorry, 2 different projects. So
Okay.
you have the floating docks for the boat ramp. Once we get those, we can put those in.
Okay.
But we have the, what's commonly known as the crab dock, or what's also known as the fishing pier at the boat ramp. That was closed because it needed structural repairs.
Okay.
We have those structural engineered plans to do the repairs and then to make it ADA accessible. But we can't do that work because it's actually in the water and it requires us to have an in-water work window and permit.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
the boardwalk cleaning that was supposed to begin earlier this week was delayed because the contractors were ill. So that's still going to occur, but it probably later this week or early next week. Engineering plans are 100% for the new John Toppit's kayak launch. And great news is that the kayak platform was shipped today. Bad news, it is from eastern United States, so it'll take a few weeks to get here. But in the meantime, staff is working to secure a contractor to do the upland side improvements that need to occur. So we might be seeing that towards the end of this summer. I also wanted to share, and it's appropriate that you're here, that we have secured a contractor to undertake a landscaping improvement project around the Visitor Information Center, which will include not only improved curb appeal, but it'll also include an irrigation system. And I know that the staff and volunteers at the Visitor Center will be happy not to lug hoses around down there. After that's completed, we're going to undertake a slurry seal of the 2 parking lots and restriping. One of the things that's on the council goals is to look at options on how are we going to take care of our parking lots. We do have 11 parking lots in the downtown. One of the things that has been discussed by our assistant city manager is the idea of every year using a portion of the unspecified lodging tax dollars that are not given to promotions or for the running of the VIC is to undertake some parking lot maintenance in one of our parking lots in the downtown. So that's what our plan is, and we thought we'd start out with a showpiece down by the Visitor Information Center.
Okay.
But staff was quick to tell me that would be after the landscaping project, so we didn't have this nice new parking lot finished that was marred by a bunch of dirt. So
Yeah.
What's the life on a slurry seal?
we'd be 5 or 6 years. So we're doing the 2 parking lots there. We'll probably have to bulk the parking lots together. Other parking lots, we do have some projects coming up for making them a couple green parking lots, but that's still a ways down the line. It doesn't take very long. So when that happens, we'll be closing those parking lots to make it happen. But across the street, it was just a matter of a couple days on each area they redid. That I have one more thing, and I put some documents here for you. At their last council meeting, there was some public comments about 75 short-term vacation rentals, and I wanted to share with you, we actually have the list here for you, and there's only a total of 28, Only 24 of those in residential, 2 are in commercial, and 2 are in mixed use. So there's not 75.
Not even close.
No,
Is that it, Roger?
that's it.
All right, thank you. Sarah, let's start with you. Council comments.
No comments tonight, I appreciate that.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks. Carmen. Council comments?
Yeah, so, yeah, I appreciate the update on the housing stock with our current vacation rentals. It's interesting, I think everybody has been abuzz about housing and the unhoused and all of the different, forces that play in each one of those discussions. And of course, the city council was very intertwined into how all of these perform or operate. And I'm really glad that we have a homeless task force. I can't remember the exact title of that, I'm sorry. But I really appreciate you working on that and holding that meeting. I know it was difficult because we hear, one side of the community that wants action for housing, and then, literally pretty much the next week we hear about, restrictions on housing and where to build and such. And so it's a delicate balance, and I just hope that everybody is aware that the solutions are not going to be easy. They're going to be difficult. We need to find ways to increase our housing population or housing stock and help people wherever and however we can to have a respectable place to live. And I struggle with this pretty much every day. Being on the city council and knowing that we are not developers, the city government does not build housing, but is somehow trying to fix that problem is difficult. Relying on private companies to build this infrastructure for us and finding ways to make that work and attract people, and while still balancing the livability of the current housing stock is very difficult. And I'm glad that we have these public meetings. Everything we do is public, so it's good to hear all of these comments, and they all swirl in my head, but I'm positive that they swirl in all of our heads on the city council on a pretty daily basis, trying to get creative. I'm just waiting for some magical, magic bullet that's going to really make it happen for us. But it's good to hear from the community and just try to make a path forward. And we're all going to do this together, so it's good to have the dialogue. I will ask that, or I guess I will state that respectful comments are heard so much clearer. So that's pretty much all I have to say for today. I have one more thing. I own a business next to the development of the extension of the Coos Village Boardwalk and its connection to Front Street, and the project is happening. They're moving pretty quickly on it, so I'm really looking forward to hopefully walking on the boardwalk to get to Front Street here, maybe in the fall. So exciting news. That's all I have.
Thanks, Carmen. Lucinda.
I just wanted to thank the public that came out tonight. I sat in the audience at our town hall meeting, reminding everyone that we had meetings 2 times a month, and so I'm always encouraged when people come and learn more about what we do. And I appreciate the mayor's comments and the other councilors' comments about transparency and the difficulty of this work. It's not a simple solution. And I think we spend a lot of our time educating people on what we are responsible for doing and what we're not responsible for doing. And Carmen, I wish there were a magic bullet, but we've seen other jurisdictions wait for big white knights to come in town, and that takes a really long time. So while this might be messy, and while not everyone will agree with what we do, I think that we are making strides to improve our community, make it a livable community, and I will leave it at that.
All right, thanks, Lucinda. Rob?
Well, first, is Jim still over there? Yes, he is. When we approved the spring and summer road projects, I believe that Central and 12th was on that list. Do we know where we are with that?
The designs work, I believe, is done, and we're getting ready to go out for bid.
Okay. Next, as you guys know, the city provides some funding for the Boys and Girls Club Summer Program, so I wanted to give you an update on the last 3 weeks. The program has been in full swing. We had gymnastics and basketball skills camps. Kids have engaged in several science experiments, including making an apple erupt like a volcano. Kids participated in a virtual Disneyland escape room. Animation brain game where they made stop motion animation videos. And then this last one, I've been working out at the club for 22 years, and I think it was the coolest program that we've done. They took a group of the older kids and they had them develop products, and then they did market research with the younger kids, refined their product, and then they had a club craft fair, and they sold the products to the younger kids using imitation money. And then the older kids, the money that the imitation money they got to trade in for prizes from the club's prize vault with the money that they earned. Some of the products included a comic book, bracelets. There were several slime products, and a club newspaper, which I thought was pretty cool. So that's what's been going on with the Boys and Girls Club. Since Councilor DeNovo is staring at me, I should mention that the Mill Casino food truck event is this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And if you weren't aware, the Boys and Girls Club receives a portion of the entry fees for that event.
50%, if I remember correctly, Councilor
I
Miles.
thought it was 60, but we'll go with 50. And then lastly, the library board met last week. So the library statistics for the month of June. The library had 6,021 total visits, 17,581 items checked out, and only 486 of those were digital downloads. They conducted a total of 24 programs with a program attendance of 1,403. And they are now tracking this new one, which I didn't know was possible, but they had 11,614 total wireless connections for the month of June. And the library rooms are back open, and since the beginning, I think over the last year, it's got used 345 times with an estimated attendance of 2,999. So that just shows the importance of the library in our community.
Yep.
And then lastly, I'll just say what Carmen and Lucinda said about
Engagement.
the engagement, yeah. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Rob. Stephanie?
Well, I quickly wanted to mention that Rob mentioned the food truck off this weekend, which is filling your belly. But the downtown Coos Bay Wine Walk is Friday night, and that will benefit the Coos History and Coos Art Museums. So be sure you drink responsibly, but come out and support that event and the businesses in downtown Coos Bay. Also, pardon me?
Where does that start?
That starts at the visitors, at the Coos Bay Visitors Center at 50 Central Avenue, right between the 101s, I say. So stop in there and make a $10 donation. That money goes right back into the community to support those cultural opportunities that we have here. And then also another cultural opportunity later this month, but I'll probably mention at both meetings, is the Blackberry Arts Festival, which is the 27th and 28th. And that takes place on Central Avenue, and that is a juried art and craft program, very unique anymore, it seems like, but also features blackberry treats throughout the market as well. And those historic blackberry pies that I believe it's PEO puts on, they're pretty darn good. So, and then my last thing is I just wanted to mention, since Councilor Farmer is not here, that the coordinated response system, the IGA, following the IGA for the county and North Bend, met this week, and they are hitting the ground running as far as taking that plan of action and putting together a strategic plan and someone to carry that out to deal with the issue of homelessness. And so they hit the ground running this weekend. Nicole represented the staff and Councilor Farmer, and I just sat in and listened and tried not to speak, but it's really hard to keep my mouth shut sometimes, but everybody knows that. So those were the 3 items that I wanted to mention.
Thanks, Stephanie. So a couple of things I'd like to bring up. First of all, if you haven't had a chance, go by the Coos Bay Ironworks. Its restoration is in full swing. My understanding is that they want to kind of keep it a museum open to the public. She's refurbishing it pretty much the way it is. It's being painted, the windows are being new, and they've been moving product out. And I look forward to the sign being put up shortly and the place being open. So another great project for Front Street. I also want to thank the participants, not of just tonight, but also of the town hall meeting. We had over 100 at the town hall meeting, and there were some ideas. I know that a lot of people were here not happy, but there's some people that came up with some valid suggestions and ideas. One of them was a sobering center, regulations on shopping carts, and I think those are important that we're going to consider. I think there's the homeless committee and what Stephanie referenced earlier, this commission that we put together because of House Bill 4123, which is $1 million for the county to put together a homeless plan, and they're moving forward on that. Other things I think that are very important that I think that we need to think about, they were very loud that they wanted something done, and getting something done takes action, and it also takes money. So I think another thing that we might want to consider is the serial levy. And the serial levy should think about, funding a sobering center, and maybe some way to have officers, like Daryl, resource officers available. Some things that are needed that we cannot afford, but maybe the citizens might step up and understand that be the case. 5-year serial levy, and maybe we can get there. Anyway, I think it's something that's to be suggested. The one thing I definitely want to advocate is that everyone vote for the jail levy that's coming up. It's important to have it. It has not been an operational facility for 4 years, and I think our chief and other officers can tell you because of that, it's nothing but a problem. And until that is funded and that it's operating like it should be, we're going to continue to have problems. So I hope that everyone understands that and votes for it. Coos Bay has problems like all cities, large and small, but an article a friend sent me today, and it said that Coos Bay is one of the great small towns to retire in, with a population of around 30,000 or less. And the article was wonderful to read. I'll send it to anyone who wants to know about it. So, sitting up here and doing things, this makes me happy, because you know what? All our efforts have done something that makes this a positive area that people recognize and want to move here. There's always things that we can do better and address, and that's going to go on, but that's part of our jobs with us and the staff. But we'll continue to do that. This city's a great city. I'm proud to be part of it, and I love it here. So I'll adjourn this meeting, and thank you for attending. Oh, Rob?
I think Sarah, she did have her hand up. She must have
Sarah? Absolutely. I think everyone, it's going to take everyone to work together, and hopefully that's what we'll do. So, thank you, Sarah. All right, anyone else? All right, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's see what we got here.